Alright guys, so this is Hunter Coffey's Enforcer. That was an 0659 truck, and we are putting this Enforcer in there for him. It's got all Exergy fuel, it's got 400% overs, dual 14mm CP3s. I'm not sure on the charger setup it's going for, but he has goals of 1600 horsepower, and it's going to be used as a dirt drag truck, so that is today's project.
So we have another one of Hunter Coffey's trucks in here. This is a little bit different than his last second gen that he had. So it's getting two GT55. It'll have a 55, or have a GT55 frame turbo on the manifold, T6, and that's an 85. And then out front we'll have a 106. So it's going to be a lot of air for this setup, but it has two 14mm race pumps from Exergy instead of 500% from Exergy as well. So it'll be a pretty high horsepower street truck. It's a regular cab long bed, it's got a 50 cage, all set up for that. We're gonna do a full 5-inch exhaust out of this as well. It'll have somewhat of an inner fender left when we get all done with all the plumbing and stuff, because it is, with two turbos of that frame, it makes things a lot more difficult and a lot more tight. So we're gonna get started on this and get the manifold on, get the covers machined down so we can start placing out some tubing and stuff in that, and yeah, get going on it. So we are in hopefully about the last week and a half of Hunter Coffey's truck build. The turbo kit came off and got coated, ready to go back in the truck. Right now we pretty much I've spent the last little over a week finishing up all of the wiring. I'm not quite done yet, but trucks like these take an excessive amount of time to actually wire and fit them. You know, he has 3 kits of nitrous. He also has a Datalogger. We went with an AEM with a CD5 screen and a 22 can module. He also has a Lemur, so that is going to control the transmission in this truck. So it'll be air shifted, and with that we also have a bunch of other electronic components in this truck. So we have like electric fans, trans cooler fan, a bunch of components that really need to have a separate wiring panel and basically be by its own, not really tied into the factory tip them in the truck, and just basically pull power off the same stuff. So I actually end up putting all of the components for this truck in the back. With it being a regular cab, he's got kind of this plastic trough or whatever you want to call it in the back. So we kind of utilized a chunk of that to be able to actually put all the wiring components in it, and then ended up laying out my whole harness and harnessed the whole thing to front and back up to, we have a couple firewall bulkhead connectors in through the firewall to run everything out to, we end up using Rife sensor blocks on this. They really simplify a lot of, running individual sensors here to here, and really just lets me pull one small section of wire out from back here up to the front of the truck to be able to configure everything through one simple program. So that is kind of where we're at with this. We have, as you can see, we actually use some switch panels from Speedwire Systems. So like this actually has 2 interior lights below it. And then, you have your key on, and, we have ignition power. So that pretty much powers everything back here. And then, we have our logger. So if you need to pull a log separate, if you don't want to have the truck on necessarily and just want to power individual systems, you can. That way, like for this, it'll be tied into the OBD2, so we can pull a log from this by itself. And then obviously we have the anteater, which some of the stuff isn't quite hooked up, but his anteater's powered on separate as well. And then his nitrous. So we have that with this truck has a staging limiter with it. So we actually tie an input out of the maximizer into the staging limiter to actually pretty much just delay the nitrous system from coming on when you're staging the truck. So this is kind of a lot of info, I guess, but it's a lot that goes into these projects. And with this not being full standalone, still utilizing a factory ECM, it does make it a little difficult because a lot of these components aren't made from the same manufacturer. So just tying everything together kind of gets a little overwhelming if you don't lay everything out correctly and know your pinouts and everything. So this is kind of an alternative to what a Bosch or a Motec standalone unit would be. These still work really well, and we've done a lot of horsepower on these. The 849 ECM is a great platform, with all of its full fueling capabilities. Yeah, this is a good alternative, just a very time-sensitive or time-oriented project, but we're going to get him up and running, and before long, he should have a pretty rowdy street truck.
Our first day on the dyno, we got started a little bit late this afternoon, and we ended up making 965 horsepower on tune 1, which is 900 microseconds. I've got rail pressure low, I've got timing low, and then on tune 5 we ended up making 1547 horsepower, and that is, we had a 1600 horsepower fuel only goal. I see some things in the data that I want to address. Drive pressure is higher than I like, making 100 pounds of drive pressure, only 76 pounds of boost, and 40 pounds of boost out of the atmosphere turbo. So the second stage is making 40 pounds. And what my theory is the 40 pounds of boost from the atmosphere feeding the manifold charger is slowing the manifold charger down too much. So I think we need to go to a smaller exhaust housing on the manifold to keep the turbo shaft speed up on the manifold charger. That has a 137 T6 housing on the manifold. Another thing we're fighting is the air dog is dropping lift pump pressure. We saw as low as 2.5 pounds of pressure on that last pull on tune 5. So we're going to add a boost reference to the air dog, which will, as boost pressure comes up, it will increase the lift pump pressure and fix that problem as well. We should have done it in the beginning, just something we weren't really thinking about until we got on the dyno and we could look at the data, watching it drop off. We're like, crap, we got to do that. So make those adjustments, and midday tomorrow we will get this thing back to ripping, get fuel only numbers where we want, then we'll turn the nitrous on and get after it. Hopefully we can get that 2,000 horsepower that the Coffeys are looking for. Okay, now that everything's cooled down, we're taking the turbo kit all the way apart to get to the manifold exhaust housing. And we're wanting to take the 137 exhaust housing off and replace it with a 112 AR. And we get the turbo kit all the way apart and the new manifold on, just to find out that the 112 exhaust housing is slightly different and it's making our pipes misalign. And so we're going to end up putting this back together just the way it was. So we're going to go after our drive pressure and boost changes with the wastegate. We're going to get it back, run it fuel only, adjust the wastegate where we want it, and then we're going to turn the nitrous on. Here we're using shop air to set the regulator for the wastegate pressure where we want it. We have 40 pounds of regulated boost going to the top of the gate, which assists the factory spring pressure in the gate to hold the gate shut to get the desired drive pressure that we want. Now that we got our horsepower goals, Hunter wanted a little bit of seat time of running a truck on the dyno, so we're going to turn it back to tune 1 and 2 and let him make some dyno pulls and get familiar with the truck while it's strapped to the dyno. All right, well, it's been a big day here, and we've got Hunter's street truck making some good numbers. We ended the day at 2,112 horsepower and a little over 2,100 foot-pounds of torque. I think it's certifiably able to be called a 2,000 horsepower street truck. On tune 3 with nitrous, we did right at 2,000. First pull, we turned the bottle on, it did 2,000.1, and then we clicked it up one tune and whacked it again, and it did 2112. So overall, very successful day, and I don't know, what do you got to say about it?
Definitely a big thank you to Levon and his crew and D&J, and it was a good ride.
You've got your second gen that we did earlier this last year we did, and you've been racing it this summer. You got that down to a 622 at 112, so Hunter's not completely new to it. This is what, your first year really that you were actually racing something reasonably fast. So he's excited to get this truck home and start going to the next level, and I think it's going to be fun to see this truck out. It's a very well built truck. Truck's well rounded, it's got air conditioning, radio, it's still comfortable, and we did what, 985 horsepower turned all the way down. So he's got a good range of power. He can keep the bottle off. We did 1,600 and what was it, 1619 on fuel, and we turned the bottle on and made 2,100. And you're planning to take this truck, what events are you planning to hit yet this year?
Diesel Truck Wars.
Okay. Yep, so hopefully you can go home, get this thing on the track, maybe get a couple test hits in it, and take this thing out to Diesel Truck Wars and have some fun with it. I'm sure you're going to see more of this truck out in action. He wants to run some ODSS stuff with it next year. They'll be at UCC, and we will catch you in action, and I hope you have a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so one other thing we get to do is move Hunter Coffey up the list. He made it all the way to number 2, and number 1 is Justin Ziegler that did 3,300 horsepower at UCC and did 2197 on our dyno, if that puts it in perspective a little bit what this truck is capable of. So we're going to knock Zane Nuck off of number 10 list at 1,451 horsepower. This list keeps getting stronger. What was it, 2112?
hopefully we finish the year right there.
I would say somebody else getting there, they got to hit it pretty hard.